The goal of this study is to help in reading and understanding Revelation. When I first read Revelation, it was like reading a crazy mixed-up series of calamity. This is why most people teach that. They don't know how to read it. Once you understand how to read Revelation, it becomes a much more interesting and informative book. In order to understand the timeline of events in Revelation, it is important to understand how the book of Revelation is structured. Many people think that it is a chronological record of events from start to finish, and that the entirety of Revelation is prophecy. In this chapter, you will see that there is an order, but it's not chronological, and we'll see that the first 3 chapters are not prophetic. If we read Revelation with the assumption that it's chronological, it is impossible to understand. There are several places in Revelation where John writes and explains some things in a circular type of way. It's not linear where it's all a sequential record, it's broken up with visions nested within visions. To prove this point, we can look at several places in Revelation that show how John writes and explains some things in a circular type of way. Some of these may seem frivolous, but some are major points. I'm including them all just to show the style of writing used in this book. 1. Revelation 13:1-10 tells us about the beast, which is the Antichrist and the one-world government he will be leading in the final 42 months, verse 5. The dragon, who is Satan, Revelation 12:9 and Revelation 22, gives him, the Antichrist, his power, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, except for the saints. Then in verse 12, John is telling us about the false prophet and how that man causes them that dwell on the earth to worship him, the beast. He does miracles and wonders like fire coming down from the sky to cause the people to believe in him. John tells us one thing and then goes back to explain something else that was happening at the same time. It's not a chronological account, but is somewhat circular in that he goes back to show what is going on in the same time period. 2. Revelation 13 is showing us events that happen in the same time period, 3.5 years, as some of Revelation 12 events in the same time period as Revelation 11 events. This is not some future 3.5-year time period. John explains a particular time and events of a certain level of understanding or viewpoint in chapter 11, then different events of the same time period in parts of chapter 12, and then shows us different events from a different perspective of the same time period in chapter 13. 3. At the 5th trumpet, Revelation 9:2, an angel opens the bottomless pit. Then, in Revelation 11:7, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit kills the 2 witnesses who prophesied for 12 and 60 days, 3.5 years, which is at the end of the same 3.5-year period that Satan is cast to earth and the Antichrist is reigning, Revelation 12 and 13. Then in Revelation 17:8, we see an explanation of the same beast, the Antichrist, the devil, who ascends out of the bottomless pit, and subsequent explanation of where he gets his military power to take over the world. John has told us about this in several places, but it's definitely not a chronological order. He goes back to explain things that he's already told us about in previous chapters. 4. Revelation 7:15-17 shows us the same declarations as Revelation 21.3:4. The end of things prophesied in Revelation is the beginning of eternity with God, and is mentioned in both chapters, but is not a chronological timetable. God doesn't conclude all things in chapter 7, and then all the events between chapter 7 and 21 happen after that. It's a statement about the same time period in both places. 5. In Revelation 8:2, John records 7 trumpets given to 7 angels. Then in Revelation 8:3-5, he explains a whole other angel with things that happen with that angel. And then in verse 6, he returns to the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets. He starts a subject, then explains something else that is happening or has happened prior to this, and then goes on with the subject he started on. 6. Revelation 15:1 states that John saw 7 angels having the 7 last plagues filled up with the wrath of God. But then in verses 6 and 7, we see the 7 angels come out of the temple and are given the vials full of the wrath of God. John starts the subject stating that they are there, goes to another vision of the saints in heaven, and then returns to the angels and gives more information on how they got the vials. 7. The 7th trumpet, Revelation 11, 7th vial, Revelation 16, Revelation 7:15-17, Revelation 21:3-6, and Ezekiel 38:39. All show us the same events. First of all, the statement, "It is done," appears in Revelation 21.6, Ezekiel 39:8, Revelation 16:17, and the same statements about it being done and or how the kingdom of God is come and what it will be like when all is finished are made in the seventh trumpet, Revelation 7 and Revelation 21. Revelation 15 also shows us those who have gotten the victory of the beast, came out of great tribulation, just as Revelation 7. This is the same group of people who are with God when it's all over. 8. The seals, trumpets, and vials all have something explained in between the sixth and seventh. The seals have the vision of the 144,000 and the multitude of saints in heaven with the vision of God's love, mercy, and kindness after it's all over. The trumpets have the vision of the seven thunders, the mystery of God being finished, the little book, measuring of the temple, the two witnesses. The vials have the gathering of the kings for the battle of Armageddon. These are all things explained by John that are not in a consecutive timeline, but are explanations of things that have already happened or are happening at the same time, and things that will be after the fact. 9. Revelation 16 starts the Battle of Armageddon, but then chapters 17 and 18 are devoted to explaining the great whore. Then in chapter 19 he picks up the Battle of Armageddon again. 10. Revelation 16:12 states that the Euphrates River is dried up to make way for the kings of the east, and then verses 13 and 14 state that the three spirits go out to gather the kings of the whole world to battle. Which happens first, or are they happening at the same time? 11. Revelation 11:19 and 15:5 both state that the temple in heaven is opened. When we study the events surrounding both statements, we see that it is not that the temple is opened twice, but that we are seeing the same event written about in both places. 12. In Revelation 14:20, the winepress of the wrath of God is trodden. Then, in Revelation 19:15, Jesus treads the winepress of the wrath of God. This is the same event in both places. It's not something that happens in chapter 14 and then again in chapter 19. 13. Revelation 10:7. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound. Revelation 11:14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. The seventh trumpet does not sound until after the sixth, but we hear about it in Revelation 10, before the statement that the second woe, sixth trumpet, is past in Revelation 11. Definitely not a chronological record. When we understand how Revelation is written, we must also understand that we can't make assumptions about the timing of something just because it may be nestled between a couple other statements. Careful study can reveal much, however, when we put it all together and compare with other areas of the Bible as well as Revelation. In Revelation, God gives us three different accounts of the end time. These are given in the seals, the trumpets, and the vials. These accounts are all different but have a common intersection point. Just as we have four accounts of the life of Jesus Christ in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we have likewise been given different accounts of the end-time events through the seals, trumpets, and vials. We will be discussing the common intersection point in this chapter, as well as the other records of things that are not part of the seals, trumpets, and vials. In order to understand how these three accounts intersect, we're going to carefully compare 5 scriptures. In these scriptures, we do a comparison of the sixth seal, the seventh trumpet, and the seventh vial. The events of the sixth seal in Revelation, chapter 6, the seventh trumpet in chapter 11, and the seventh vial in chapter 16 are all recording the same events. We will also see that Matthew 24:29 and Ezekiel 38:18-22 are parallel accounts of the same. I encourage you to read each of the scriptures and take a look at the following chart. Study the chart and compare what occurs in each scripture. Each of the passages are describing the same events that occur immediately after the tribulation at the Battle of Armageddon, same as the Battle of Gog and Magog. Notice that the seal, trumpet, and vial all have an earthquake, and the wrath of God is come upon the earth. Matthew shows the same events that also are shown in the sixth seal, and the events in Matthew happen immediately after the tribulation, which is when the Battle of Armageddon takes place. The islands and mountains moving, the great hail, God's wrath and the earthquake from Ezekiel are the same as the seventh vial, and except for the hail not mentioned in the seal, it's also the same. Likewise, the seventh trumpet has the same events except for mountains moving. The Battle of Gog in Ezekiel is the same event as the Battle of Armageddon. The conclusion is obvious. All of these events happen at the same time, but they are described in several places in the Bible. If this is true, then Revelation is definitely not written in chronological order. But before we make any decisions, let's look at a few other things. If we follow the 7-year chronological order theory, does it make sense? Does Babylon fall once or twice? Revelation 14:8 and Revelation 18:2 both state that Babylon is fallen. If it fell in chapter 14 and Revelation is chronological, did it get rebuilt before chapter 18 so it could fall again? Did it fall twice, or are there simply two accounts of this event? One earthquake or five? Révélation 6:12, Révélation 8:5, Révélation 11:13, Révélation 11:19, and Revelation 16:18 all record an earthquake or a great earthquake. Is there really 5 earthquakes or just one with several accounts of it? Will there be great darkness twice? Revelation 6:12 and Revelation 16:10. Will great hail fall twice? Revelation 11:19 and Revelation 16:21. Will mountains and island move twice? Revelation 6:14 and Revelation 16:20. When will the wrath of God be poured out? Révélation 6:17, 11:18, 14:9, 10, 14:19, 15:1, 16:1, and 19:5 all speak of the wrath of God. In Revelation 6, 11, 14, 16, and 19, God's wrath is poured out, and in chapters 14 and 15, God's wrath is presented as a future event. Will the great day of God's wrath really be poured out 5 separate times? And why would John, the writer of Revelation, present God's wrath as a future event in the middle of the book? No, it does not make sense that Revelation is a chronological record of events from start to finish. We are being told about the end time and what to expect in several different ways. What does make sense is that the seals are the long story. The spirits have been around a long time. The trumpets are the median story, approximately the last 100 years. And the vials are the very last and very short story. All 7 of the vials are poured out at the end of the tribulation, all ending at the Battle of Armageddon. The seals are discussed in chapter 5, and the trumpets are discussed in chapter 6 of this book, and my website. There are many other things recorded in between and after the seals, trumpets, and vials. We'll take a look at those, and then we'll put it all together in a timeline that we can follow to the last day. One of the things that trips people up in different areas of the Bible is that they take the chapter divisions literally and even take the explanation headers inserted by men literally. But the Bible wasn't written with chapter numbers and verse divisions. The chapter and verse numbers were added centuries ago and was broken up in the way they thought it should be at that time. An excellent example of a chapter being in a very misleading place is Revelation 8. Verse 1 is finishing up the vision of the seals, but then verse 2 begins the vision of the trumpets. This leads people to believe that the 7th seal somehow leads into the first trumpet. As you will learn in this chapter, that is not the case. Let's look at what John is seeing and when. Revelation begins with John on the Isle of Patmos, where he had been exiled, and he heard a voice. The voice is that of Jesus Christ, as we see in verses 8, 11, 17, and 18. He is the first and the last, and he that lives and was dead, but is alive forevermore. In verse 19, he tells John to write things he has seen, things which are, and things that are to come. Revelation 1:19. Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. The book of Revelation can be divided into these 3 distinct categories. 1. Things John has seen. In chapter 1, John records having seen Jesus Christ himself. The things seen and heard during this experience are the things which thou hast seen. 2. Things which are represent things that are in John's present world. Chapters 2 and 3 are letters to the 7 churches which are in Asia. These churches existed at that time in Asia. Some people, assuming that the entire book of Revelation is prophetic, have put forth a theory that the 7 churches must be church ages of the future. That is simply not true. The truth is that the messages to the 7 existing churches of that time are the things which are. 3. Revelation 4 begins, the things which shall be hereafter. Revelation 4:1. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will shew thee things which must be hereafter. Now that you understand how to read the revelation of Jesus Christ, I highly encourage you to do what I did. Read it over and over and over, at least 10 to 20 times. It only takes an average reader about an hour to read the whole thing. If you spend a few weeks just reading it over again, you'll really start to get it all in your head and start making sense of it as you see how the entire book is about the revelation of Jesus Christ. All the events lead to his day, and you might understand that it's quite literally impossible to go through the entirety of Revelation in a video or two. I have a 21-part series where I go through it chapter by chapter, and I also have a 12-part live stream series. These can both be found at this website, as well as my article on understanding Revelation. Take a look. prophecyandtruth.com, Prophecy Revelation, HTML.